Hey, Jamie here, and welcome to Module 11, where we're going to focus on accelerated advancement, which is how do you consistently move forward within your career at a faster pace than average. So in this first part, we're going to talk about short-term acceleration, and then in part two, we're going to be breaking down long-term momentum and how to set yourself up for those negotiations. So in part one, we're going to understand how to set yourself up for success in a new position, team, or company within the first 30 days, understand how to establish strong and trusting relationships with your manager or managers if you have multiple, and your colleagues, and then understand how to set up future opportunities for early promotions, raises, higher bonuses, increased responsibilities, as well as other incentives. So for you, the most important thing to think about when now that you've accepted this offer and you're going to be joining this new position or a new team is you have 30 days to anchor your reputation. Now, if you remember when we talked about earlier on setting initial first impression, building references, and conditioning beliefs and building trust, and trust is a belief that needs to be conditioned, you're going to be doing the exact same thing now that you're in this new position or on this new team. You're going to have about 30 days to create a strong baseline reputation for who you are, how you work, your personality, how you work well with others, how you manage and operate the work that you have to do, both internally on your team as well as cross collaboration with other teams, as well as how do you communicate with your manager. So the first 30 days really sets the tone for the next 12 months, the next 6 to 12 months. So the first 30 days are then going to be reaffirmed or confirmed with your performance in the next month, in month 2, and then month 3, and then month 4. So you're going to be stacking references. If you remember reference stacking and building beliefs, you're going to be doing that all throughout the year. And very similarly, at the end of the year, based on all the references and the performance that you've built, you then have the opportunity to benefit from that value and monetize it. So you got to start with an excellent impression and then continue to build value through strong compounding references throughout the year, which then allows you at the end of the year, or 6 to 12 months, whatever your time frame is, that you can then sit down with your manager, review the year's performance, and we'll talk about all this in part 2, but the idea is you want to be able to sit down with your manager 6 to 12 months from now and negotiate for more. So in the first 30 days, what will you actually be focused on doing? Well, the very first thing you need to focus on is having a one-on-one conversation with your direct manager, the person who's going to be responsible for your performance reviews. And then additionally, you want to have one-on-one conversations with 2 to 3 of the most experienced and successful people on the team so you can learn from them how to accelerate, how to do extremely well in the position and ramp up, because a lot of people join teams and they don't really want to bother anybody. And that's because they feel like, oh, I'm the new person, I don't want to annoy anybody, so I'm just going to figure everything out myself. Well, that's a very unproductive way to ramp up. It's a lot better and a lot more efficient to find who are the 2 or 3 most successful people already and pull them aside, ask them thorough questions, and we'll go through questions, but learn from people who have already been successful, and not just decently successful, but who are the best. You want to learn from the best on the team or within the company. So for the conversation with your manager, some things in order, or not some, but in order, you're going to want to ask these types of questions. So 1, you need to figure out what is most important for being successful in this role. 2, what are the most important outcomes you would like achieved within 6 months? Now, the reason you're starting with these 2 questions, what's most important for success, and then what are the most important outcomes you'd like achieved, is because the manager is going to have a preconceived idea of what success is for this role. And maybe that manager's definition of success is not what's on the job description. And so by asking these questions in the first 30 days, you're going to get a really good understanding of what is most important to your manager and making sure that you're bringing to light, okay, within 6 months, what do you expect me to have achieved, or what outcomes have been completed? After that, you then want to ask, how will my performance be measured? Or what KPIs should I be focusing on? And KPIs are key performance indicators. So really all this is asking is, how is your manager going to be determining how well you've done? And the reason this is important is because you're going to set benchmarks. So how would you define excellent performance? Now, by asking this question and knowing how your manager is going to be determining your performance, you can then ask, okay, well, set a high watermark for me. What is excellent performance? And your manager's going to have to think, and oftentimes these can be difficult questions for managers to answer because maybe they haven't actually thought through this stuff. But these are questions that you really do want answers to, because if you don't have a starting place and you don't have a benchmark and you also don't have a goal to shoot for, at the end of the year, maybe you have good performance, but what is good? You're not comparing good to anything. So your manager says, why would I pay you more? You did well, but you didn't exceed expectations. Well, maybe you didn't exceed expectations because there literally were not any expectations 12 months ago. So what you're doing is you're creating a baseline, which is, where am I today? And how will you be judging performance? And then what is the goal, or what is an incredible outcome, an excellent performance that if I achieve this, I know that I've exceeded expectations. But then you want to take it one step further. How would you define outstanding performance? Outstanding performance is one step above excellent. And when you ask what is excellent performance, your manager is going to have to stretch and think, oh man, excellent performance, what would that be? And he or she is going to put down their minds and say, all right, I don't know if you're going to exceed this, but this would be excellent. By asking outstanding, they might not even know. And that's the whole point, is you want to set these barriers ahead of time. Because when you know what outstanding is, if you achieve that outstanding at the end of the year, which you should shoot for, if you achieve that, you will absolutely be in a position in 6 to 12 months to sit down and renegotiate either compensation or responsibilities or title or something or bonus. So then, after you've created the benchmark, so where am I today? And then what is excellent performance over the next 6 to 12 months? And what is outstanding performance? Then you want to ask, what resources are available for training and development for my role? And this is important because a lot of people will join a new company or a team and try to find everything on their own. And because of that, they might not be super efficient in developing themselves for a new position, new responsibilities, a new industry, new regulation, new something. So you always want to ask your manager, because your manager's probably gotten pretty good at training people, or even if they haven't gotten good at training people, they know where the resources are within the company, and more often than not, they'll just send them to you. So always ask that question. Then you want to ask for the manager's advice on who are the 2 to 3 people on the team you would recommend that I learn from. The reason you're asking this is you're not going to know who the best people are on the team or within the company to learn from for your position. So by asking the manager, 2 things are happening. One, the manager is going to be realizing, wow, you are a go-getter. You really want to dominate this position, and you also want to learn from the best. And then 2, the manager actually will have insight as to who the best people are because they've been there. They're the ones probably managing the other people, or maybe they just know because of their reputation within the company that, all right, if you're going to learn from anybody, you want to learn from these 2 to 3 people. You got to talk to them. So then next is you want to ask, do you have any preferences for how you'd like me to work or communicate with you? This is super important because a lot of people will have managers and they do something that their manager doesn't like, but they don't even know that they're doing it. Or let's say that the manager, they always expect you, so he or she expects you to respond within 30 minutes of their emails. Well, if that's what's in their mind, it's important that you know that, because if you're constantly responding after 30 minutes, which is driving your manager insane, but they never told you that they have this rule in their head of, I expect you to respond in 30 minutes, well, that's going to deteriorate the relationship. So Maybe your manager prefers email or phone, or certain days, don't reach out on certain days. You just want to establish a baseline understanding for how can I best work with you and communicate with you on your terms. And the manager will absolutely love that, because I guarantee he or she will have several specific things that they share with you where they say, if you could do this, oh man, that would be excellent. So then finally is, if I were to exceed all your expectations and achieve outstanding performance, would I be able to chat with you in 6 to 12 months about increased responsibilities and my compensation? Now, the reason you want to ask this at the end of the conversation, and why this is such an important question to ask, is your manager is going to say yes. And if they don't, that should also be kind of a red flag, because if you exceed all expectations and achieve the outstanding performance, which for them, they probably view it as like, all right, close to impossible that you're going to achieve this outstanding performance. But if you were to exceed all expectations and achieve that, your manager is going to be pretty hard pressed to say no, that you wouldn't be able to sit down and chat about increased responsibility and compensation. So this is important. You're asking that. And then what you're going to do is you want to capture this conversation in writing. And the reason you want to capture this in writing is you're going to be able to bring this back to the table 6 to 12 months in the future. So I hope you're already starting to see how this works. You're literally planning for your negotiation 6 to 12 months from now. That is the biggest reason why most people are never in the position to negotiate in their careers, is because they don't have the foresight. They're not planning 6 to 12 months in advance. They're literally just saying, well, I think I'm underpaid, so I'm going to, pull something together here in the next day or two, and then I'm going to storm in there and make a proposal. Well, that usually does not go well. One, because you haven't set expectations to begin with. You're blindsiding your manager, and your manager's not going to appreciate that. So by having this conversation 6 to 12 months in advance, and then as I'll show you in a second here, but you're going to keep that manager posted every 2 weeks, bi-weekly, there's no way that your manager is going to be able to say no, or, where did this come from, or I wasn't expecting this. Especially if they know that you've outperformed, they know it's coming, and they're going to be in a really difficult place to say no if they know that you've been crushing your performance. So it's super important that you capture this in writing. Now, how you're going to capture this in writing is after this conversation with your manager, where you've asked those questions and you've gone through those definitions, you're going to send a follow-up email to your manager. So the subject line could be as simple as summary notes, have the year, the month, and the date that you actually spoke with your manager about this. And something like, hi, Emily, thanks again for your time and for being willing to share your thoughts on how to be successful in this role. I've included my summary notes below. And then all of the information that you've talked about with your manager, so all of these questions, the information that you've learned and that both of you discussed, you're going to include those summary notes in this email. And again, it's because you want to make sure that your manager has it. You want to make sure that you have it. And if your manager 6 to 12 months from now says, we never discussed this, you have email evidence and you have it in writing. Very important to have it in writing. Okay, so now let's talk about the conversation that you're going to have, the one-on-one chats with the 2 to 3 experienced and successful colleagues. So several questions that I would recommend that you ask, and always feel free to come up with your own as well, based on the position, the company, and the industry. But several that I highly recommend are, how did you become excellent at this position? What worked really well for you and what didn't work well? What are the most important parts of this job or skills or knowledge areas that I should focus on mastering first? So by asking this question, you're going to have people who are very good at what they do prioritize what you need to learn for you. A lot of people just start swallowing information as much as possible, and there's no strategic prioritization to their learning. And you always want to be efficient in your learning. So asking them first, what do I need to master, will give you guidance on that. And then third is, what resources did you use to learn how to become better at this position and develop your skills and knowledge? So again, asking them for the resources. How would you recommend I best work with everyone on the team, including my manager? What are the team's best practices and unspoken expectations or agreements? Now, this is important because these colleagues will be breaking down the team dynamics, how to communicate with everyone, what are culture points that the team always does, or just how does the team operate in general, so that you're not going to cross any lines or screw anything up or make a fool of yourself. And it'll just build a really strong, solid reputation for you within the first 30 days. So the next, if I could please ask for your advice on how to prioritize my first 30 days, how would you recommend I best approach my first month? If these are the 2 to 3 best people on the team, or the best people within the division or the company, whatever, if you can sit down with them for 45 minutes to an hour and they're willing to help think through how you could maximize your first 30 days, that is going to very strongly accelerate your growth on the team, because they know what works, they know what you need to do, and they're going to lay it step by step out for you, which is going to save you an enormous amount of time and make you look very, very good in your manager's eyes, which never hurts. So, and then finally is, what other recommendations or advice would you have for me? Things that you wish you had known for your first 30 days. And again, you never know what's going to come out here, but this usually someone will say, based on how this company works, or based on how the manager is, or how this team operates, or the systems or the technology or something, and then they're going to come out with saying, if I had just known this, or if you were to do this, your life will be a lot easier. You're going to outperform everyone else, etc. A simple example where having these 2 to 3 conversations massively helped someone that I'd worked with previously. So it was someone who was going into sales, and when they first joined the sales team, there was a large group of salespeople on the team, probably between 20 to 25 people. Now, not all of them were that good. There was a bell curve just within the sales team itself. But what my previous client did was he sat down with 2 to 3 of the best performers on the team and learned their ins and outs. How do they approach the conversations? How do they prep? How do they prioritize their time? What kind of information are they sending continuously to their prospects when they're not on the phone with them or talking to them? So it was through those conversations that he learned how to dominate his first 30 days. And within the first few months, he was already outperforming average, because he knew how to play the game better than most other people, because he had these conversations. So then after you have those conversations with the 2 to 3 best people on the team, you then want to send them summary notes. So something along the lines of summary notes, again, year, month, date, and then, hi, Emily, thanks again for your time and for being willing to share your thoughts on how to be successful in this role. I'm including my summary notes below. So as you can see, it is literally identical, like the exact same note that you sent to the manager. So the reason you're also sending these summary notes, not just to have it in writing with your manager, but why are you sending it to your colleagues? Well, people love to feel heard, understood, acknowledged, and appreciated. So when you send these summary notes to your colleagues, one, you're communicating that thank you again for your time. I deeply value your insight and your advice. And you're going to be able to show them later on. Notice the patterns here with networking. You're going to be able to show these 2 to 3 best colleagues later on that I listened, I heard you, I took your advice, and now I'm succeeding. Here's my progress. And you can literally send them progress updates just like you would with traditional professional networking. So I hope you're seeing the relationship building patterns, whether it's inside of a company or outside externally, to get a position. Human relationships are built the same way. Trust is built the same way. So building trust, deep trust, respect, and rapport with your manager, one of the best ways that you can do this is without your manager asking, always send bi-weekly progress updates. I promise your manager will absolutely love this, because as your manager learns how you operate, how you do your work, how you communicate with him or her, when your manager knows with certainty that you're going to be sending these progress updates, and within these progress updates, you're going to have these 5 different sections. So you're going to start with any questions or concerns that you have currently in your work, and you're going to bring those to light and ask your manager for help. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to include your short-term focus, so all the things that you're working on in the short term, and you're going to put them in the order of priority for your manager to review and see. Third is you're going to talk about long-term focus things. So think of these as long-term projects or things that you're going to be working on in the future. And again, you want to put those in the order of priority that you see them in importance in your mind. And the reason you're including this order of priority and you're listing out the short-term focus and the long-term focus is your manager doesn't know what's going on in your mind. And so when you're sending this bi-weekly progress update and you're including the short-term versus the long-term and in order of priority, it's kind of like your manager has a perfect insight and full transparency into what you're thinking and what you're focused on and what you're doing every single day. Super important for the manager. And then the fourth is you're going to include in achievements or progress made since your previous update 2 weeks ago, which tells your manager what have I accomplished in 2 weeks. And then you're also going to include at the end any additional thoughts or notes that you want your manager to know. So this is what a simple progress update email to your manager would look like. So a subject line like progress update, again, year, month, date, and then your first and last name. Hi, Emily, please find my progress update for the weeks. And then you're going to include the month and the day, the month, the day. And please let me know if you'd recommend reprioritizing what I'm currently focused on. When your manager sees this and your manager learns to get in the habit of expecting you to send these, you will build very, very deep trust with your manager, because your manager will learn, because you're conditioning your manager. Every single time you send this progress update, you're creating a reference, and that reference is further strengthening a belief that your manager has about you. So if your manager is getting this and your manager knows that you're going to bring to him or her any questions or concerns that you have, well, that manager learns to believe that I don't need to check in on this person. I don't need to micromanage this person, because if they have a problem, they'll let me know, and I can expect to hear about this problem every 2 weeks at the minimum. And then also is your manager will know what you're thinking about, what you're focused on, and what you're currently working on, which is the short-term focus and the long-term focus. That is like the manager's most stressful part of their job, is trying to make sure that everyone is prioritizing what should be prioritized. And when your manager can literally see the list of things that you're focused on and working on in order of priority, they won't check in on you. They'll say, yes, you're killing it. This is absolutely it. Focus, focus, focus. Get it done. But in the top part of the email, where you can see it says, please let me know if you'd recommend reprioritizing what I'm currently focused on. If your manager sees how you've prioritized the action items on your short-term and long-term list, he or she may say, hey, I love that you're doing this, but right now that's not the top concern. I'd actually prioritize number 3 instead of number 1. So I would switch number 1 and 3. Well, all of a sudden, your manager now knows what you're going to be focused on and is very in line with how you're doing your work. And then finally, the achievements or progress. You want to include this for 2 reasons. One, for your own data tracking, and we'll show what that looks like in part 2. But then also you want to continue communicating with your manager, what have you achieved? Because sometimes managers might say, what have you even done over the last week or 2? And if you haven't been keeping track of that, it's really hard to recall later on. Our memories are not that good. So by putting these into a bi-weekly email, you'll never forget what have I achieved over the last week or 2. And especially, if you try to negotiate 12 months from now and remember everything you've done over the last 12 months, it's your mind doesn't work like that. So that's what you're doing. And the additional thoughts or notes, this could be, so an example, additional or personal comments. So maybe you're planning on taking vacation, or maybe you found something that was relevant for the team or the manager that you're including as a link. So that could be really anything else you want to communicate with your manager. So you're going to have access to the first 30 days worksheet for download and for use. So I'm going to bring that up and walk you through that. So you can see here that everything we've just talked about in this part 1, I've included here again in this reference sheet. So your one-on-one conversation with your manager, I've included the questions that you want to work through with your manager and make sure that you do define these questions and the answers to them. And then also in terms of the email, for capturing all the information that you learn in this conversation in writing, I've included that short little email to the manager here. So summary notes, year, month, date, hi Emily, blah, 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 and then the summary notes from the conversation. And then also the one-on-one conversations with the 2 to 3 experienced and successful colleagues. I've included that information as well as the recommended questions. And also, don't only consider these questions. I do challenge you, think through for your specific position, for your company, for your team, what do you believe to be the best questions to ask the people who are performing the best? And then after those conversations, again, you're going to want to send a follow-up email thanking them and summarizing the conversation. So again, that email outline is there. And then finally is the progress update, the bi-weekly progress update for your manager and that email. So I've included that here, progress update, and then the structure for the email. And feel free to customize this however you see best fit for your position. Again, this is a structure. It's the outline. Be creative with it and maximize this for your position. And then I've included here just kind of 5 additional things for crushing your next 12 months. So 1, you got to crush the first 30 days by meeting with the managers, talking with those 2 to 3 colleagues, and getting the ball rolling. And then update, revise your 3-year strategic career plan. And we'll talk about these. So 2 through 5, we'll talk about in part 2. So this is it for part 1. You'll have access to this. And in part 2, we're going to be breaking down and talking about how to approach that conversation for the negotiation conversation when you're actually looking to sit down with your manager 6 to 12 months from now. The biggest goal for this module 11 is you're laying down the foundation in the first 30 days for your negotiation. You're going to be tracking your progress and your achievements and everything that you accomplish over the 6 to 12 months so that by the end of the 6 to 12 months, you can sit down and negotiate for what you want. So that's it for part 1, and I'll see you shortly in part 2.